What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 123 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Split Screen Games weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And making his grand return to the show, Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, 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 ahoy. And that is for episode 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
Or it was for episode 119. Who knows?
Episode 119 times 3.
Why does that say 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3, Mother Core Flea.
What?
What? I think you're confusing. I'm confused, so I'm going to guess all of the non-British people are confused right now. So I'm going to just grab the reins. Max is back. It's great to have you back, buddy. Welcome back to the show.
It's great to be back.
If you've been watching on YouTube, you've been haunted by the ghost of Max's zoomed-in eyeball, so it's great to see you in motion again.
You know, I still couldn't tell you what color eyes Max has, even though he's just been a zoomed-in eye.
He's right in front of you. You can't tell.
My eyes are so bad, man, and I have it like I'm on a 13-inch laptop.
You got green eyes, right?
They're sort of like people say blue, some people say green.
Okay. You get it. You gotta.
It's in the eye of the beholder, you know.
You know, my dad's eyes changed color.
At what
used to be
age?
brown, and now they're blue.
What?
Yeah, weird.
At what age?
I don't know, like 50.
What?
Yeah.
He had like is that like an X-Men thing where he has like a
secondary mutation? Yeah. What the hell?
We were all sat around and we're like, oh no, Dad's
It happened in real time.
Steve, you can't just bring something like that up at the beginning of the Steam Deck podcast. You got to bring that up on After Dark. I have so many fucking questions now. Okay, tabling that. If you want to hear about Steve's dad's eyes changing color at the age of 50, we're going to cover that on After Dark at some point, okay?
It sounds like the kind of thing you go to you go to Turkey to get done for like 1,500 quid.
Just come and talk about your eyes changing color one day.
Bring them on show.
I have so many episode ideas for your father. I'm going to reach out to your dad and do episodes just me and him. I'm going to interview your dad.
He'd have a great time just yapping with you, Pete.
He would. We get on great, you know. I honestly, one of the highlights when I inevitably come to the UK, I was so eager to have dinner with your father. Like, I really would love to have dinner with him.
Nando's.
Yeah.
Would not be Nando's. It would probably be Miller and Carter. It's my dad's.
That's his place.
Oh, you can
Wherever
have
he
that
wants to go.
massive wedge of lettuce covered in
All right, here's the thing. We have an excellent topic today and a great thumbnail that I'm sure we've alienated any new listeners already.
All right.
So let's get to the topic here because it's a fascinating one. All right. There is a project that has dropped over on GitHub this week. It's called XenonRecomp, and it is, or I guess, is that the name of the project, or is it?
So there's two projects. XenonRecomp is the tool that allows you to recompile Xbox applications.
Any Xbox 360 game can be recompiled for PC. Is like the use of this tool, right?
Yeah, and then they've got, so it's kind of a bare bones tool. There's work that you need to do, and once you've done it, there might be some bug fixes, some patches, and some things you need to do. But they've got an example that they've built called Unleashed Recomp, which is Sonic Unleashed, and it's an installer for Sonic Unleashed that adds a bunch of new features as well, that runs natively on Steam Deck as well as a Flatpak, which is great.
It reminds me a lot of, you know, when we talked about stuff like Ship of Harkonnen and like some of those kinds of projects where it's like, it's all of the stuff that you would, you know, all the stuff that existed in the base game, and then a lot of like the kinds of PC port features that you would like want on a wish list, like stuff like, you know, the obvious stuff like higher fidelity or whatever, but like ultra wide support and, you know, like being able to like have support for the proper controller icons and things like that. Is
the full, you could have full control of the hardware, just all the stuff that you can get from just like actually having the parts of the game and not just the game running in an emulator.
Right. Yeah. And really letting you take advantage of running it on much better hardware. Right.
Yeah. And also, finally, Sonic Unleashed. You know, people have wanted to play Sonic Unleashed again for decades, I'm pretty sure.
Let me tell you, I don't know why. I downloaded this. It's not a good game. I'm really sorry. Anyone that likes Sonic Unleashed, I was happy to have him on the leash. He can stay there.
I liked him better when he was leashed. Yeah, it's very funny because I feel like it's very much like a phenomenon with like 3D Sonics where like depending on how old you are, you go to bat for a different bad Sonic game.
Banging.
But it's not. Like, those games are
let me tell you,
also
it's
bad.
not.
They
It's
just came
not.
out when we were children, so we loved them.
Yeah.
And the Chow
You leave
Garden
the
is
Chow
great,
Garden
so we'll
alone.
always have that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying
There's
that
never been a good Sonic game. Just FYI.
that's not
Other
true.
than Sonic
but
Mania.
That's a way fairer take and still way too hot for my
Sonic and
taste.
Tails. Come on.
There's good
I
ones.
did like those when I was a kid. You know. Okay, there's never been a good 3D Sonic game. How's
Would
that?
you
That's
say
reasonable. That's
Sonic
probably reasonable.
games, 2D Sonic games are better or worse than 2D Mario games, Max?
We're
2D
not.
Sonic
This
games
is
are
not what we're here to
better.
do. Talk about the technology, Steve. I already got to deal with handbrakes from this guy. I can't have them from you too.
You just don't want him to hate on 2D Mario any more than he already
Yeah.
does.
We have a
cannot
whole
believe- I'm being
podcast about
silent.
Nintendo. I don't need him to hate on 2D Mario here. Come over and
dunno.
fill a gap on that show. Talk about the
Why-
Xbox games.
Why invite me on if you're just going to silence me? Why are you going to leash me like Sonic was leashed for so many years?
Max Unleashed. I can't take it.
Yeah. It's a full moon out there, so watch out. Steve, tell us about the technology, please.
So we'll talk about the technology in a little bit. I want to talk about the actual game and the installer itself and how it all works, because I think that's what most people are going to be interested in. And it's how do I play these games? Is my favorite game available? Currently,
How do I do it
the
myself
only,
if it's not?
Yeah, currently the only game that is available easily is Sonic Unleashed. You can download from the GitHub from the Unleashed recompiled GitHub a Flatpak for Steam Deck, or there's an executable for Windows. You run that, it will ask for an ISO file and what's called a title update. Once you've got those files, which you need to legally acquire from your own Xbox, once you've got those files, you can it will install it for you. It will ask you, do you want to install the DLC? You can opt for yes or no, but the DLC does include the high-res textures. That's where the recompiler pulls them from. It's from the DLC, so you probably are going to want to make sure that you've got that. And once you've done it, you can initially you need to boot it up in desktop mode on your Steam Deck, because you need to go through that install process. But once you've done that, you can add it to game mode, and it basically runs as if you're playing it natively on the device, because it is running natively on the device, as opposed to emulation, where it's pretending to be a different machine and it's running through the layer. This compiles it into an actual Linux or Windows executable that can play. There's a bunch of features that they've packed in. So basically, aside from just it being the base game, as Max alluded to, there's a new options menu, and in there's like resolution options, HUD options, there's like ultra wide support, there's achievements built in, so where previously that would have been handled by the Xbox itself, they've baked that into the pause menu. You click the cheeseburger button when you're in the menu, and it will open up the achievements, and you will earn them, and it will give you a little notification about them. This runs incredibly well. I was so impressed. It's flawless. The installer is just easy to follow, really, really good UI. It works both with keyboard and mouse and controller, so you can really walk through the process. And if you're a Sonic Unleashed fan, or even if you're just interested in this kind of technology and what this is capable of, highly, highly recommend you go download it. It's only a 30 megabyte file plus the Sonic Unleashed files. And you'll be able to just install and enjoy the game in probably the best way it's ever been playable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm a
right?
big emulator fan. Big fan of emulation. Do it all the time. This kind of thing is, to me, more exciting than like new emulators. You know, like the PS4 emulator is cool. It's really, really cool. There's a lot of stuff going on, but we've seen so many of these projects recently that are taking old classics like SNES, you know, all the way up to like Xbox 360, PS2, and making PC native, you know, in quotes, versions of them that you can just make look so much better, and you can do loads of things with. You can mod them easily. You can do all the stuff that you want to do with a PC game, and also because it's not running on an emulator, you can sort of, you know, do so much more with it. You know, you mentioned earlier Ship of Harkinian earlier. I actually went back and I've got a list I was sort of looking at before, and there's loads of these projects out there, like Super Mario 64. There's the Jack and Daxter one that I played that I think is really great.
Oh yeah, I
There's
remember
Jack 2 one that was in the works. There's ones for like Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus, Driver 2. There's a load that are in the works right now. But apparently, even Breath of the Wild right now is being decompiled for PC. and that's like 19% of the way through, so it's way off. But games like Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night, which has not got a PC native version, there are people currently working to decompile that so we can have a version that runs on PC without the need of emulation, which probably, people argue over, what's the right way to play it on emulation. Do you need to have, what's the right frame rate? What's the right resolution? How do you have it exactly the way you want it to? Well, probably this way if they can get it working. Just really, I love these kinds of projects. Wish I knew how they worked, though.
I kind of feel like this is, for me, the future of game preservation rather than emulating the hardware itself. You're basically giving new life into these old games. You're able to kind of break down the pieces using tools like XenonRecomp or XenosRecomp. So there's two sides to it. One's the code, one's the shaders, and there's two tools that do both of those things to then compile it all back together into an application that a different machine knows how to read. Essentially, it's similar to, say, the Steam Deck knowing how to play games from Windows on SteamOS. It goes through basically a layer to say, this instruction now means this, and it can then recompile it all back together. And they can then inject additional things into it. So it's not just like running on an emulator, which some emulators can inject things in. We saw Nintendo do that with the GameCube emulators. For the Mario 3D All-Stars pack, they use Lua scripts to inject things in to change the buttons and small details like that, but it didn't go into kind of the minutia of being able to expand, turn off MSAA, turn off motion blur, really go into the nitty-gritty that you could only really find when you dig deep into the code and are able to kind of have access to that, which decompiling and then recompiling for a different platform allows you to do.
So, excuse me, talk to me a little bit about some of the mechanics of this. So, like, you brought up this as perhaps an alternative to emulation moving forward, right? Like that, obviously, like Max said, I think there's just a lot of like inherent value to this approach, right? And like giving you just a little bit more control over the software and the end result rather than like just having it exactly the way it was, right? Like it's you get some of those like remaster style benefits, in a different way. My question is, do you think that there is perhaps like a legal element that potentially makes this a more vulnerable approach to preservation than emulation, right? Because obviously emulation is legal, right? And the organizations, the sites that get targeted are being targeted because they're sharing files and they're illegally distributing files, right? But emulation itself is something that there's legal precedent protecting it. So as you said, like if you are going through the proper legal channels to dump ROMs or ISOs and going through that process, right? Like that's something that, unless the law changes pretty significantly, right? Like emulation is always going to be a safe route in terms of like it's allowed, right? Where we've seen certain projects like this get taken down seemingly without much rhyme or reason, because obviously we talked about Chip of Harkinian and like that's still kicking around, but I remember you shared with the community, and I believe we talked about it on this show, where there was the PC native version of Link's Awakening.
That was very different because they actually shared source code and files, and it was so essentially it was as if someone had gone through the install process, out the other side came the executable, and then they uploaded that online. So it had the original assets from the game in there, but I believe that was actually, it was turned out to be that was a complete remake and someone made it in a different engine. With this, you need the source files, you provide them. It's similar to an emulator where you're just like, right, the emulator can do it, but you need to provide the BIOS because it needs to use the BIOS in order to do it.
So basically what you're saying is that the reason that this doesn't have that same vulnerability is because they're not providing you with the game files. They're providing you with the means to create your own
because
PC
otherwise
launcher.
Something like Proton would not be allowable. because
Right.
it's doing the exact same thing. It's allowing you to run Windows games on Linux, which initially was not it's not what the developer initially intended those games to play on. They wanted them to run on Windows. They released it for Windows. This is just a tool to allow you to play those games on something else. And rather than going through the emulation process, which is a little bit more hardware intensive and can work for most games, with a recomp, you'll need to do it on a game by game basis at the moment. So at the moment, as I said, Sonic Unleashed is the only game that has been released on the Xbox 360 using the XenonRecomp tool. But that doesn't mean other people can't do it. We've seen the N64 recomp tool, which still exists and is still out there, and we saw the N64 Zelda games kind of got released as a recomp version of that as well, like a PC port.
So talk to me about that. So what does that process entail, right? Because and this is why I had that question at the top, right? Like XenonRecomp is the tool that you use to create, like the Unleashed executable that runs on PC. And you also said that it's the only game that's been like quote unquote released, right? So is that when you say that, do you mean that the XenonRecomp team has only created that one?
That's right. They've made one installer
sort of a
file,
sample.
Essentially.
So now say, I want to go download XenonRecomp and I want to there's a different Xbox 360 game that I'd like to get running on PC. What does that process entail? Is this the kind of thing that like somebody that could get an emulator up and running could do, or is it a bit of a higher barrier for entry?
Yeah, at the moment it's a much higher barrier for entry. It's not like, say, me or Max downloading the Xenia emulator, for example, and running 360 games in it. The GitHub for both XenonRecomp and XenosRecomp both say users are expected to modify the recompiler to fit their needs. Do not expect the recompiler to work out of the box. You will need to basically run it. It's probably going to spit out some errors. You're going to need to tweak the compiler in order to get it to work with your game. And that's why there's the specific Unleashed Recomp, which has the tweaked version of the recompiler as well as the nice installer, so it knows, grab these files from here, run it through the compiler. Out the other side, you're going to get this list of files. You know what to do, and basically run through the process. But looking at their GitHub commit history, it looks like this has been a 6-month project to go from XenonRecomp. So 6-month project for when they first committed on GitHub. So we don't know if they had previously committed elsewhere, but yeah, it looks like their first commit was around 6 months.
And you're saying
ago,
that's for Xenon?
For both Xenon and for the Unleashed
Okay,
Recomp.
because that was for a second I was like, did I mishear you? Or you're saying it took 6 months to get Unleashed going? Because then that does speak to, it's an uphill battle, right? Still an incredible tool.
They did both of them in tandem, would be my guess, because it's like we need to
do it for a game.
Figure out how this works, and we'll get one game working. And clearly the dev team are big Sonic fans. They're called Hedge. Hedge Dev. There's the Hedge Mod Manager, which allows you to.
All right, come on now, listen.
I hate to see their internet search history. I would hate it.
Look, I would too, but we're not king shaming on this podcast. All right,
Sonic fan shaming. I'll do it again.
So yeah, they're clearly big fans of Sonic, so I guess that's why they went with Sonic Unleashed, especially considering it's been one of those games that's been kind of locked to that generation for a long time.
So Steve, I have to, and you have this in the document. What other games would we want to see?
Oh.
Right? Okay. I'm going to bring up a comment that we got on February 18th, my wife's birthday, special day. And I read this on the show before, and I want to bring it back to your attention now because you have the tools. Hello, gents. Recently got into this. Excuse me, I'm too excited. Recently got into the podcast along with getting my first Steam Deck and immediately fell in love with the show and, of course, hardware. Catching up on the backlog right now and had one quick question idea pitch for Steve to possibly tackle if he's down for it. I've been trying to find a way to play Viva Pinata along with Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise on my Steam Deck. And he goes into the solutions he had tried. Steve said he was going to look into it. It's only been a little bit, so I'm not giving you shit. I said I was going to keep on top of you, though, because I, like Nico, am a man of culture and would like to play Viva Pinata on my Steam Deck natively. Mm-hmm. So I got to say, Steve, as the resident smart friend, what's up? Can we get this going? What do I got to do?
Not me. I could not get this going.
You can't do it? It's that difficult?
Someone smarter than me who has experience.
That does not bode well. That does not bode well. If you think that you're not smart enough to figure it out, this is going to be you got to wait for the games to get released. You're not doing this yourself.
That really is what people should be taking from it, that they need to wait for the games to be released. You need someone with experience with shaders, with experience with C++, experience with probably porting games or emulating games, like as in writing emulators in order to do this.
Nico, we got to start. We got to reach out to Hedge Dev. We got to make some friends over there, and we got to petition for Viva Pinata.
All right, I'll do it. I've got a free weekend. I'll have a look at it. All right, I'll see what I can do.
You can figure it out, Max? Great. Thank you.
And
it's funny because here's the thing, and I hope that you take this as the dig that it is, that my immediate thought was that you were going to spend that free weekend infiltrating Hedge Dev to become friends with them, to ask them. Not in a million years that I thought you would be capable of doing the programming.
It's because you know that social espionage is my forte, and I could do it. I could do it.
That's a lot more believable to me.
I could do it.
That you could be a
really
spy.
Holding back on all the like the jokes I could make at the expense of these people, but they're much better than me, and I respect what they've done here.
You should, yeah. I don't appreciate you slinging stones. I'm trying to make friends over here so that I can get my game.
Right, nobody send them this episode of the podcast, but do send them my warm.
I'd love to have them on the podcast, but now they're going to hate you.
Yeah, I won't be here that week. I'll be busy.
Or I invite them on and we all attack you, and that's the other way to go about it.
Well, I take back everything I said about Sonic Unleashed being a bad game. If they come on the show,
they didn't make the game.
They might be upset about it though.
Imagine if I was like Metroid, fucking shit. Come on,
right,
no one wants that.
There we go. Sorry, good. We got rid of him. Now, Hedge Dev, please come on the show and make me a Viva Pinata compiler, please.
Now, while you're also doing that, I also put together a little list of games.
You got a list? Okay.
Oh, I've got a list.
I want to play the Gears of War games, the Xbox 360 Gears of War games that I loved, with all of the horde modes and stuff that I used to like get around with my mates. We'd all play that. Yeah. Gears of War 2 and 3 are the Xbox 360 ones, I think. I'm assuming.
Throw smoke.
I mean, start again. Can Xbox? Oh, I wouldn't say Xbox One. Xbox full stop games. Original Xbox. Are those games? Would those games have the same process here, or is that would that require its own?
Right, no, it's just for 360 titles.
Fine. There aren't any good Xbox games anyway.
So that architecture is different.
Did you say there are no good Xbox games? You're such a pain in the ass.
I just generalize. That's what I do.
The original Xbox, you don't know there was a single good game. Halo
and Fable are two good games immediately. We don't even need to name two more games. That's two good games. They're both
those are games on PC. So
okay.
Name me a game that's only on the Xbox that you want to be.
The original 13, because the re-release sucked, and I really liked 13. It was really.
You mean XIII? Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
What about Blue Dragon?
Yeah, I was gonna say I
don't know what that is, but it sounds like something I would have googled in primary.
It's a JRPG that was made by, I want to say, is one of the Final Fantasy creators, and it's the art is by Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, and it was an Xbox 360 like exclusive. It's like it's
and it's never been re-released on PC.
It's one of those like really weird like why was this not a bigger hit? And the answer is because it was on Xbox. But then it's also like, why didn't they try to re-release it on PlayStation or something? You know,
this is like, until the Switch version of The World Ends With You, I spent like so many years being like, why has nobody played The World Ends With You? Why is it stuck on the DS?
Yeah,
and then when they put it in Kingdom Hearts 2 or Kingdom Hearts 356 over 2 days, whatever the hell, I was like, finally someone is talking about The World Ends With You that isn't me.
There's lots of games like that I don't understand. Like, why is Samus Returns only on 3DS still?
Yeah,
why can't we play that on my Switch or anywhere else?
Recompile it. Someone should decompile it for me and recompile it for me.
Right. Let's go. If you stop talking shit about Sonic, maybe our friends over at Hedge Devil help us out.
I like Sonic Mania, so if they want to,
I want to call out so we had a comment, and I don't remember. I think this was actually but this was back in March 4th. So this was actually before this came out, and it was when we were talking about ports that we would like to see come to Steam Deck.
Yeah.
And Team Linux, from like very regular poster over on the Discord, longtime listener of the show, he was like, "Can we get some older Microsoft games?" And he shouted out Rare Replay, which we talked about in Perfect Dark, both of the Perfect Darks. But then he said some 360 games, and he said Blue Dragon. He also called out one that I had forgotten about, which is Lost Odyssey. Are you guys familiar with that one?
I think I've heard of it.
It was.
I recognize this. I recognize this like logo and
Yeah.
this really looks like. Do you remember when they did those? There was those trilogy of like Wii games, that Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and there was another one. And people were like, "Bring them to the West," and then only one of them was good. This looks like that sort of.
And I think this was the same thing where it was, I believe, it was published by Microsoft, and it was published for 360 in like 2007 and then 2008 in the West. And it was written by Sakaguchi, one of he's the creator of Final Fantasy. And then Nobuo Uematsu, who's the composer of the Final Fantasy, like he did the music. It's like, again, this is like one of those games that it's like, if more people had played it, I wouldn't be surprised if it had a bigger legacy, you know? I think it just like, because like it got like fairly good reviews. It has a 78 on Metacritic, but a lot of it's one of those like, I think it was
one of those Lost Odysseys.
Yeah, right, where it's like it's like, you know, and you and I talked about this with Avowed, where like when the reviews came out and I hadn't played it yet, and it's like some people are saying it's a 7 and some people are saying it's a 9, and it's like, is that because it's like a niche kind of game, you know? And it's like, there are people that are going to be like, yeah, whatever. Like GameSpot gave it a 7.5, right? But like most of the other reviews are an 8 or higher, right? Like, so I think that's another good shout of like, that would be a really interesting one to see get recompiled for PC, because I imagine there's probably millions of people that would be interested in it that have just never played it.
I feel like that's one of the games that I could easily see it happening with as well. That is this passionate team of like a small team of devs who are just like, I fucking love this game. I've not been able to play it forever. It's never really had much recognition. And now I'm going to make sure that someone can do it in the same way that this is what's just happened with Sonic Unleashed. I think it's really strange to me that we're able to decompile a game and then recompile a game when these companies have access to the source code. Why are they not pumping out remasters of these games? If it takes a small team of open source developers 6 months to get something like this across the line, and that's including the figuring out the decompilation and then the recompilation. I mean, it might have taken them 12 months, but regardless, with resources of a big company, you could probably put a team of five developers on it and get out some remasters with like, you know, ultra wide support, a menu.
It's like really confusing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like now that like you say that, like it does make you wonder of like, because like, you know, so on Nintendo Noise this past week, right? We did an exercise where we were like picking like a first party game, a third party game, and then kind of like an outside, you know, like a risky pick style, like a weird thing that would be cool to see. And one of the ones that Ken shouted out for his third party thing was like, why have we never gotten like a Beautiful Joe? Like there's never been a remaster. There's never been a collection. There's never been like any way that those games were re-released aside from when they were released on GameCube. And it's like, when you hear this and it's like, tell me you could make a PC version like in a few months? And it's like, that's just money on the table, isn't it? You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, you easily, because some of it could be emulate like licensing issues with music or whatever.
Yeah,
but I feel like you could.
But it's like you could do the Crazy Taxi thing.
Yeah.
Well, I always think about like how they can get remasters wrong. Do you remember when in like 2019, I want to say 2020, when they did a Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles remaster for the Switch? Now that on GameCube was a game that I loved it, and somehow they managed to make that game bad on the remake, the remaster or whatever.
Right.
And if you can take something like this, which is the original game in its entirety, it just runs better, it is scalable, all the things that you like about PC gaming. How do you get bad remasters, you know, bad remakes? How do you get that when it should be as simple as if this team can do it like this, and it, you know, sure, it's not going to have all of the fancy features that gamers want now, ray tracing and all those things that people need.
You know what? Sometimes I think it's enough just to re-release a game and put it out at $10 and just be like, you know what, you can play the game again. Are you happy?
Worked
Yeah,
with
and-
Resident Evil 4 for so long, didn't it?
Yeah, it's just weird, right? Because it's like it feels like a money on the table thing, and it's like I guess it ultimately just comes down to like the like resource allocation, right? Which is that like every project that you say yes to, it means another project doesn't move forward, and I guess like there is probably the mentality with like some of these games that it's just like how much money is there in you know, a PC version of a Xbox 360 game that didn't sell super well and wasn't critically well received at the time, and it's like, but at the same breath, like I'm with you where it's like if you have these games, like you own them and they're like,
but you've got the source code, so you don't even need to decompile it and recompile it. It should just be a case that you can recompile it from source.
And I guess there is the question of like, maybe like for some of these games the source code doesn't exist because it's like,
I mean that's definitely possible, and that is what happened. I think with the Diablo PlayStation port, they ended up having to basically reverse engineer
the
it. And
one that comes to mind
recompile
for me is that happened with Kingdom Hearts when they did the Kingdom Hearts original remake, right, to bring it to modern consoles. They had like lost the source files, like they were just gone, which is fucking crazy, right? But it's like, yeah, I mean, so like I get in those situations, fair enough, right? Like if maybe it's
yeah, but you can then go through this, and you know what? I often think like Nintendo's made their own emulators, Xbox has made their own emulators, PlayStation's made their own emulators. We got to get to a point where, you know, there's a team that must be working on something like this in the big publishers, and just to have a tool like this, and if they can perfect it, and with the knowledge base of how their games were made, they have that knowledge internally, that they know what tools they used and how everything works without having to figure it out themselves. They could have a tool that's literally right, add the files, spit it out the other side, here's your game. You know, like that, it could be that simple with, you know, maybe a week's worth of tweaking. And then you get to the point where you can re-release these games. I'm glad that the tools like this exist and we can have it for games preservation moving forwards. But man, I really feel like developers and publishers just leave money on the table all the time. Like there are so many people would have bought this. Sega could have sold this game on Steam.
Yeah, and it just to me like feels like weirdly short-sighted, you know, and it reminds me of this is a thing you and I have referenced a few times on different shows in the past, right, Steve? Which is like in I think it's Press Reset, Jason Schreier's second book, where they talk about the Epic Mickey team and like how they got acquired by Disney, and then like ultimately the thing that led to the demise of the studio was that it was like both games made a modest profit, but it's like that's a lot of work and overhead to like have a modest profit, so it's just not worth it, right? And like I think that's how a lot of decisions get made, where it's like, yeah, like could you make some money doing this re-release? Like sure, but like how much money really, and is it worth it, and blah blah blah. But I think when you think about it like this, where it's like it's not investing like let's get a team to go spend time to remake this specific game. It's let's get a team that can create,
to remake all of our games,
exactly,
recompile all of our old games that we were never going to touch again, and we were never going to do anything,
and have that be all that they do, and just make
put it out as a collection if you want to, like do all the Sonic games, do 2006 and shove that out as well.
Even just do like the trilogy of the weird ones, like the Black Knight, Sonic, and the Secret Rings or whatever, and then this one.
I mean, honestly, there's like 6 games in that, because there's also 06 is the really weird one where he like loves a human woman. There was Colors, which is the one that everyone's actually, that one's good, and you know, so it's like
there has been a remake of Colors, I think. Heroes, I think that's right. Oh, Sonic Heroes. I've stopped playing the character of a man who hates Sonic now. By the way,
these are the ones that you like.
These are the ones that I played. Sonic Shadow. Remember when they did Shadow? Hedgehog?
When they gave him a gun.
And then it was yeah.
Crazy time to be
alive. He's had a gun, he's had a sword, he's had rings, he's had...
No. Shadow has a gun. Sonic has the sword. Just want to be clear.
Oh, okay.
And the sword could talk.
Yeah. Just in case we get sued.
Yeah, just in case. Those Sonic fans will come after you, Max.
They better.
You're going to be on a subreddit later today. I don't know. I think it's like one of those things where it's just like, you know, I want to see games preserved, even bad games. So it's like, and like, you know, to this example, there are many people, right, who are like, oh, that game's bad. The general consensus
But
was
it's art. It's subjective.
Well,
Some
and
people think it's a
to this
absolute
team,
masterpiece.
obviously it wasn't, right? It was a game that they grew up loving and they have affection for, even if it's like a meme, right? Like it's like you remember it because like it was something you grew up with and you, like, you know, it was a moment, right? And you know, I'm with you. Like I think it's kind of crazy that these companies aren't more interested in preserving their history and their legacy, especially when, you know, you have, you know, like Nintendo, right? Like famously going after websites that are hosting games that they're not interested in selling anymore.
Yeah, they don't want to preserve it. They just want to legislate it. They just want to.
You know what? I can kind of understand them going after it because they do in order to have to retain trademarks and copyright and things
and that
like
is how copyright law works. Like you have to protect your copyright or you risk losing it, right?
But it's when they go after tools that annoys me because it's like that is a tool. It doesn't breach on your copyright. There's nothing there that, you know, if they went after the N64 recomp tool, for example, it's like it's overstepping at that point. I think they can. They know they can. They've never gone after Dolphin. They know they can't do that. There's nothing there really. So I think for me, this is a safe way of doing it. I do wish that there was maybe a little bit more support and a little bit more foresight.
I wish it was easier. Like I think that's the biggest thing is like if this was a thing where I could literally like
drag drop up go to a website or whatever and it's done
if you could just
you,
download this file from or not file the program from GitHub and just toss in the ISO that you want and like and it would just spit out a version that worked. That's when you're in business, right? That's when this is like, yeah, who needs an emulator, right? Like I can.
Yeah, so the issue with that, I think, is that even with the projects like this that are that simple of like, just run this, you get your file wherever you can, you do this. If ever I've spoken about this on like on a forum or something like that, you always get people that are just like, oh, can you just send me your one? Send me your complete thing. And then it gets to the whole thing of like, people are going to start like just go like,
now we're file
taking all the
again.
guesswork out of it. Yeah, then it's just like, now you're just pirating, you know.
Yeah.
Which I guess, you know, you might say that there was pirating involved higher up, but that was not the intention. Whereas now you're then creating a situation for the people that make these projects where now they are almost complicit in this, where they're like, I don't know, they're creating something that people are using to just start sharing these files.
Right.
You know, similar to how these emulators have been shut down, the Switch ones, because they start, they start just going over the boundary just a bit too much and they get shut down. I'm just worried that people
they went over the boundaries way too much, you know, using leaked ROMs before they even came out, you know.
And like selling like giving them to people who paid for Patreon access. It's like, yeah, bro, like you're just straight up advertising the fact that you're selling something that you stole. Like it's like you can't do that, you know? Whereas like to Steve's point, this isn't that, and
it's not. But you
know,
that
limitation is also why I don't have Viva Pinata right now.
Yeah, but also, you know, everyone knows that you're not really going to be following the instructions to the T. Most people, anyway. You know, it's had thousands of downloads already. Does everyone have an Xbox 360 with a hard drive and a transfer cable and a copy of Sonic Unleashed for Xbox 360 and all the DLC?
You could get it if you just have a copy and a disc reader. Like you could rip it just on your computer. That's
no, you can't. No,
really?
You can't. You need the title update in order to do it, and you can only get that from an Xbox 360.
Steve, it's like you don't know Sonic fans at all.
I feel like
of course they have all of that gear to play Sonic. Of course,
are we in a legal gray area there with update files?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you can only get update files from a jailbroken device.
But like, is that what's the legality on that? Is my question. Like, it's still intellectual property, but it's like, are you hurting anybody by sharing an upload?
You know what I mean? My view is
because like if I own the game,
are you hurting anybody here anyway? You know, even if you don't own the game, who are you hurting?
Yeah, but
they won't sell it to you. That is the thing, right? Yeah, if they would sell it to you, there would be no need for this. So like that's always the argument I come back to is like it's like I think if you're somebody our age, right, and you're an internet savvy person when you were younger, right? Like, I think we all remember the time where like there was a mass exodus from piracy websites, and it was when you could get Netflix for $8 a month, and it was like, well, why would I go through the trouble of pirating something if it's on the platform, for $8 or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest deterrent to piracy or any of this kind of stuff is like, just do what we were talking about, right? Like, if a game is in your catalog and there's any amount of fanfare for it, like, why can't I go to Sega.com and buy it and get an executable? Like, it should be that simple. Or like GOG, right? Like something like that. Like, we could all just hold hands and agree that GOG is where you go to do that, right? Like, whatever.
Yeah.
I fundamentally don't understand that decision. And I think it ultimately must be what we were talking about, where it's like, it's a margins question. It's a like, is there enough value in this? But like, I don't know. I feel like it's you gotta kind of go one way or the other with it, right? Which is either like allow the community to take some ownership over the stuff that you don't want to support and represent the brand anymore or whatever.
Or I kind of feel like that's how a lot of companies operate though. Like, you look at Nintendo, it was like another Metroid 2 remake was fine until it wasn't. It's like this slides until we're gonna do something with it now.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that might be the case with something like this. Unleashed Recomp would be fine until Sega maybe wants to release the game themselves, and then they will
probably go after them, right? Yeah.
However, with say Sonic Mania, for example, they got the people from, teams that were doing emulation and cool stuff like that to come and do.
That's a good point.
Sonic Mania.
Yeah, they should hire them.
And maybe you bring that team in, you bring this hedge dev team in, and they are in charge of doing ports like
just
this
port
internally.
every existing Sonic game to PC. It's a good idea.
Another Metroid 2 remake guy got hired eventually, not by Nintendo, but he got hired by the Moon Studios, who do Ori and the Blind Forest, and
cool.
Did fantastic work on Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I'm really glad. I don't know if I spoke about this on the show, but I wonder if whoever's in charge at Nintendo waited for it to drop fully before they did it, not just because like that's when they actually had the chance to get it, but because they knew it was good work. So they were like, let's just wait till it comes out and then go, aha, even though you've been working on this for 10 years very publicly, I'm finally stopping it now it's out. I'm very glad they did wait, because I've played that for a few times. But
yeah, it's just a shame when that sort of thing happens. And like, I understand it, because it's like Steve said, like you kind of do have a legal responsibility to do so, but in the same breath, it's like, I think there's a fair use interpretation of that sort of thing, right? Where it's like, you're not, like, we're not selling this. It's not a commercial product. How does it violate your copyright? Like, you are allowed to do that, right? Like, it's like if that as an action was illegal, you couldn't like make memes, right? Like anytime you used a screenshot from a television show, right? You'd get
the thumbnail for this video would be not allowed because we're using artwork from the game,
right? And obviously, in some of those situations, it comes down to the fact that like Nintendo might not actually legally be correct, but that like the independent team making that game doesn't have the money to go to court and fight. It's not worth it. So it's like you can just kind of bully them to stop, which that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I think it's like I think they're the clear examples where like we're talking about with like someone selling leaked files through a Patreon and stuff like that, which is like like fair play, right? But like I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's like it's clearly done from a place of love and wanting to support games preservation, which I think anybody that cares about the art form should care about.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people that do stuff like this and then just release it. I just don't have any respect for Sonic fans, so I'm sort of like,
Oh my god, that is not the official opinion of Flipscreen Games. I want to just Max's opinions are not the opinions of his employer.
but they are mine, and I will own them wholly. So
Yeah. So go after
Share me
Max.
on the forums. Advertise us on the forums. I dare you. Thanks for the engagement and yada yada and blah blah.
Everybody who is listening to this who's a Sonic fan, I want you to find Max on Discord and just send him fan art of characters named Max the Hedgehog, and just see where we get.
Oh, that'd be great.
Let's just see where we get.
Yeah. Oh, there's gonna be so many feet. I just know there's gonna be so many feet.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So, before we wrap on this, do we have any other titles that you wanted to shout out that you think would be cool to see make the jump?
There's one I'd really like, and it's silly, really, and it's Oblivion, because the PC version of that is pretty unplayable with a controller. It's very much designed for a keyboard and mouse.
I have the same. Remember, I talked to you about this with Dragon Age Origins, where like the PC version doesn't have the like any of the mapping for the controller stuff.
They just didn't do it in that era of games.
So it's like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't work. I'd love to be able to do that. Like that would be perfect for me.
I'd really mod the controllers? That. Can you mod the controls in?
You can. There's like ways to do it with like Steam input and stuff, but it's clunky and not great. But a lot of it requires like clicking and moving items and things like that, like clicking with a mouse on specific UI elements on the screen for like when you're haggling and stuff like that. It's just not great.
There's like I had like bindings where it's like they try to map it, but it's just like it just doesn't work because there's like things like a weapon wheel, right, or like whatever that it's like, well, it's just not in the game. So like
in a similar vein, I feel like I remember when I played Skyrim, I remember being like, oh, this feels like I should be using a controller to navigate through this menu. But I was trying to play it with the mouse and keyboard. It's like they went too far the other way.
Yeah, it very much is that stupid like cross design.
Yeah.
But I think there's a balance, and now I kind of feel like they've mastered it. It's usually like you're moving a giant circle on the screen.
Oh, yeah, but I hate that with
like
a controller. Why? It just makes it harder for me to navigate a menu.
It's just it's easier for them though, right? Like they just don't have to make a second. I'm with you. Where like I would rather have it just be the like, it just jumps to the next option for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm using the D-pad. It should just go beep beep, not like
right.
Oh, I missed it. Oh, I could whinge about that forever.
I'm trying to take a look and see if there's any other games I want to call out.
Does it have to be?
It would have to be a 360 game just because that's what this tool does.
But there are these other projects that are being worked on that are decompiling other things. I think the one that I'm most excited for there is the Symphony of the Night one, just because it's the only game that isn't playable on I guess you can play it on PS4. There's a PS4 version, but it's like not. I just want to be able to play here's this one game and it's not being played for an emulator, and I want it to be that one. Although I think they were working on Ship of Harkinian. I'm pretty sure there's a Two Harkinian Majora's Mask version that's semi-complete. That I'm very much excited for. It's not what we said, it's not what we spoke about, but yeah.
No, that's solid. I'm taking a look at a list to see if there's any other that I want to shout out from.
Nothing screaming out to you. I mean, Fable 2 is famously not on.
Oh
PC.
yeah. Fable 2 and Fable 3 are great shouts for sure, because Fable 1 is on Steam, but yeah, you can't get the rest of the trilogy.
There was a PC version of Fable 3, but it was only available it's not available on Steam anymore for some reason.
It was on the Microsoft, the Windows store, which
against Windows Live.
Yeah, not great. Some of the Forza games from that era are good, like Forza Motorsport 4 would be a good port, I think. But having said that, I kind of feel like Forza Motorsport, whatever we're on now, just Motorsport, I think it is probably better anyway.
Yeah, most of the other ones that are like jumping out at me are a couple of them are games that we have seen some version of it come back, but I think like all the Guitar Hero stuff from that era has all been kind of like, it's all kind of like dead and like lost. Like that would be pretty cool.
There's a PC Guitar Hero. I can't remember what it's called. If anyone can remember.
I know
Like
the
a
one you're
Guitar
talking
Hero.
about though, but it's
Yeah.
and like you can like people do like fan songs on it and everything as well.
Yeah,
Like I know
yeah.
like
I'm pretty sure I saw one of the projects in here that was Guitar Hero World Tour Definitive Edition or something like that, which is like a port of Guitar Hero World Tour. Oh man, I'd really love to get one of those like USB controllers and just jam out.
You should.
Oh.
I really want to get a dancing stage Euromix machine.
We
So
just
if
need to
anyone
get
wants
Pete
to-
on a drum kit and we can have a little band.
I'm
going.
in.
anyone wants to fulfill my life dream of having a dancing stage Euromix machine in my house, please hit me up.
I mean,
I'll
we
be
could
very
make it
happy.
happen, Steve.
Yeah. I was on Reddit. There's some good lists on here of games that people want. Tekken 6 and Tag Tournament 2. Bringing those over to
Oh
to
my
PC.
god, I love Tekken Tag Tournament too. I would love that.
Midnight Club Los Angeles, Ninja Gaiden 2, the
Ninja
Yeah.
Gaiden 2 is
Yes.
now on PC.
the
They
vanilla,
remastered, didn't they?
yeah, but not like the original. So I guess like some people want the original. I don't
All
know
right,
why, but
fine.
Oh my
Saints
god.
Row 1 that was never released on PC. The Armored Core games from the 360. 4
Yeah,
and
Armored
5.
Core's a great show.
And bizarrely, Call of Duty 3, the only main series Call of Duty game to never have a PC release.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is weird. Because it didn't even really get like big on console until it didn't really get like as big as it did till 4, did it?
Modern
why
Warfare was the
yeah.
crazy breakout hit, yeah. Back before that, we were all on Medal of Honor. God knows what happened to
Yeah, it
Medal
was
of
all
Honor.
World War II. It was all World War II shooters, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was all World War II. They should do a Cold War one where nothing really happens. And you just like sit at home, spy
Well, like,
on the neighbors.
That's like Call of Duty, like what's the football manager where it's just spreadsheets, but it's
Yeah, I've got to dispatch some spies to this area.
it's just Star Wars Episode 1. It's just trade routes and like treaties and like.
Oh, that's funny. So I found another one that I wanted to shout out, which is The Darkness. I think its sequel came to PC, but I think the original.
The Darkness 2 is on Steam. Yeah,
and the first one's like definitely the better one.
Why do I just have? I believe in a thing.
I
called
mean,
love in
maybe
my
I'm
heart?
misremembering, but my memory was that the original was preferred, but maybe that's wrong. But yeah, apparently there are plans to remaster it, but that would be a cool one.
You know what?
That was a sick one.
Fans remaster it before 2K gets to it.
I don't know if that's a good use of your time. Get on one of these other games, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remaster Toy Story 2 for me as well.
Toy
Like,
Story 2. Let's go.
Get back to the PS1.
All right, I'm almost through my list, and I think I'm good. Yeah.
I can't. Think of
It's
anyone.
weird because like there are so many of the games that did make the jump to PC, but some of them just for some reason never got a port. It's very weird.
I think it's weird that like you've got like Nier Automata, but you never have any of like the Drakengard games because they remind me of like some of those like Lost Odyssey, Blue Dragon, those like for me quite obscure JRPGs. But then to then spin off into something that became bigger than that, you think it would make sense to then go, hey, this is where it all started.
Right. Like from
Play
the
this game and
creators
find
of.
find out which of the 13 endings actually in 100 years' time spins off into the story of Nier, you know, to then become in 1,000 years' time the series of Nier Automata. You know, where does that come from? There's loads of them as well.
Yeah, I think I feel the same about Shenmue. Everyone knows Yakuza, but no one plays Shenmue, and no one played Virtua Fighter either, which is really where it started. So,
And
should
you
go
know, I'll
back
take
and
any
do that.
opportunity to mention Dragon Age, and that's mine in that, right? Where it's like everybody likes Mass Effect, and it's like I like the like less cool, like younger brother series. Yeah. Well, this is extremely cool. I'm very excited to see what this team does next. I would genuinely be interested in reaching out and trying to talk to them about the process, because I think this kind of work is so fascinating. And yeah, like Max said, I have a lot of respect for folks that like use their free time to do stuff like this that like has no commercial viability and is just like labor of love shit that benefits the community, you know? So very, very cool. Shout out to Hedge Dev and the work they're doing over there. I am very excited to see which Sonic game they make a PC port of next.
I'm also going to send over a list of all of the projects that I mentioned earlier, all of the different recompiles that already exist that you can also play on your Steam Deck.
Shove it in the
those in the
Discord.
description.
Put it in
Put
the Discord as well,
Yeah, go
Matt.
to the Discord. How do you get there?
Flipscreen.games.
Thank you.
There you go. Speaking of which, that's going to be it for the show. Thank you guys for joining us here on another one. This is a fun episode. I hope that you made it past the 3 minutes of handbrakes to the meat, because there was some cool stuff on this one.
There was also some fantastic handbrakes.
There were some. I am so fascinated to learn about what happened to Andy's eyes, but that's a podcast for another day. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast, with a very special thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of March. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Project Julian, Susan Still Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, That One Dude Nick, Ty the Dude, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go check out those sister shows, Nintendo Noise and the Flipscreen Games podcast, or if you want to let us know what you thought about this week's show, you can let us know in the comments down below, or visit flipscreen.games to drop us a line. If you're watching over on YouTube, please remember to give this episode a like, share it with a friend, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. If you're an audio listener, please take a second to leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps the show get circulated. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. Over there's been Max. We'll see you next week.